Warning disclaimer: this story is a dramatized work of fiction inspired by real-life situations. Names, characters, and events have been created solely for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The story deals with themes of love, betrayal, and heartbreak that may be emotionally triggering for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. From the very beginning, she was more than just a friend to me. She was my other half. We met in high school, sitting next to each other in English class, and it was as if fate had planned that moment all along. She had this way of making everyone laugh, of brightening a room the second she walked in, and I, being quieter and more reserved, was drawn to her energy like a moth to a flame. Over time, our friendship grew into something sacred. We weren't just best friends. We were sisters in every way but blood. We shared everything. Our clothes, our secrets, our dreams. We spent endless nights talking about our futures, promising that no matter where life took us, we would always have each other's backs. When I cried over my first heartbreak, she was there with ice cream and tissues, reminding me that better days were ahead. When she failed her driving test, I was the one cheering her up with silly jokes. We had a bond that felt unshakable, like nothing in the world could tear us apart. Even when college came and we chose different paths, our friendship never wavered. She visited me on weekends, and I visited her during breaks. We stood by each other's side at every milestone, birthdays, graduations, even the small victories like getting our first jobs. She wasn't just my best friend. She was my confidant, my partner in crime, and the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world. When I met my husband, she was one of the first people I introduced him to. I wanted her approval because her opinion mattered that much to me. She smiled at me that day, telling me she could see how happy he made me. I believed her. I trusted her with everything, even with the man who would later become my husband. I never thought twice about having her around us. Why would I? She was family. She became a regular part of our lives. She joined us for dinners, movie nights, and even vacations. At first, I was grateful. I loved that the two people closest to me got along so well. To me, it was the best of both worlds. My best friend and my husband becoming friends themselves. It never crossed my mind that the same closeness I celebrated would one day be the reason for my deepest heartbreak. Looking back now, I realized that I might have been blind, too trusting, too naive. But at the time, all I saw was love, love in the form of friendship and love in the form of marriage. I felt lucky to have both of them in my life, believing that my world was complete. I didn't know that the very bond one treasured the most would eventually become the chain that dragged me into the darkest chapter of my life. When I think back to the early days of my marriage, it feels like remembering a dream. Soft around the edges, filled with laughter, and almost too good to be true. My husband and I met at a time in my life when everything seemed uncertain. I was trying to build a career, figuring out who I was, and questioning if true love even existed. And then he walked in, steady and confident, with a smile that made me believe in forever again. He wasn't perfect, but to me, he was everything I thought I wanted. Our wedding day was the kind of memory people envy. Tears, laughter, and the promise of building a life together. Standing at the altar, I remember thinking that all of my pain, all of my heartbreaks, had led me to this exact moment. I believed I had found the one person who would never betray me, who would stand by me through every storm. We moved into our small but cozy home, decorating it with pieces that carried both our tastes. His love for simple lines and my fondness for warm, welcoming touches. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours. It was home. The first few years of our marriage were what I used to call the golden years. We cooked together, took spontaneous road trips, and dreamed about our future. Kids, a bigger house, maybe even a dog. He'd leave little notes for me in the mornings, small reminders that I was loved. There were nights when we'd stay up talking for hours, the kind of conversations that make you feel like you're truly seen. I thought I had it all, the life I had once only dreamed of. And of course, my best friend was always there, a permanent fixture in our story. She celebrated our anniversaries with us. She came over on weekends, and sometimes, she even helped me plan surprises for him. I remember thinking how lucky I was that the two most important people in my life got along so well. To me, it was proof that I had built something solid, something no one could ever tear down. But life has a cruel way of hiding its cracks until they're too big to ignore. At first, the changes were so small, so insignificant that I brushed them off. He started working late more often, claiming deadlines and late-night meetings. He seemed more distracted at home, sometimes lost in thought when I tried to talk to him. But I reminded myself that marriages weren't always perfect, that maybe stress was taking a toll on him. I told myself not to worry. After all, I had no reason not to trust him. I believed he loved me. I believed we were still the couple who promised forever at the altar. I didn't know that behind the smiles, behind the quiet moments, something was beginning to shift. Something I couldn't yet see but would eventually shatter the very foundation of the life I thought was unbreakable. Started so subtly that, at first, I didn't even notice. My best friend and my husband always got along, and I loved that. It felt like a blessing to have the two people I trusted most sharing laughs, trading inside jokes, and enjoying each other's company. But somewhere along the way, those innocent interactions began to change. At first, it was the small things, things that might not mean much to an outsider but caught my attention as a wife. I'd walk into the room and find them talking in hushed voices, conversations that seemed to end the second I appeared. If I asked what they were laughing about, they'd exchange a quick glance before one of them answered, "Oh, nothing important." I wanted to believe them, but deep down, I felt a sting of unease. Then came the little favors. My best friend would offer to help him with things I never even thought she'd be interested in. She'd sit beside him on the couch, scrolling through his phone to help him look up something, or she'd insist on dropping by with dinner when I was working late. I told myself it was kindness, that she was just being thoughtful, the same way she had always been with me. But still, something about it made me uncomfortable. The real turning point came one evening when I walked into my living room and saw them sitting a little too close together. It wasn't what they were doing. It was how they looked at each other. The look in his eyes wasn't the same one he gave me, and the way she smiled back at him was not the smile of a friend. It was softer, warmer, almost intimate. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, I couldn't shake the image from my head. I tried to dismiss my suspicions as paranoia. After all, this was my best friend, the person I trusted like a sister. She had been by my side through heartbreaks, family problems, and every stage of my life. She had held me when I cried, laughed with me in moments of joy, and stood by me when no one else did. How could I even think that she would betray me like that? And my husband, the man who had vowed to love me forever, surely he wouldn't risk throwing everything away. But the signs kept piling up. There were times when my best friend seemed to know things about him that I hadn't told her. Details about his work, about his day, even about arguments we had. She somehow always seemed to know more than she should. And then there were his excuses. More late nights, more vague explanations. I wanted to believe him, but each excuse chipped away at my trust. It was as if I was standing outside my own marriage, watching someone slowly step into my place. The two people I loved most were building something behind my back, and I could feel it tightening around me like a noose. I didn't have proof yet, but my heart already knew the truth. The line between friendship and betrayal had been crossed. The day it all came crashing down wasn't dramatic at first. It was ordinary, almost deceptively so. I had left work early, thinking I would surprise my husband with his favorite dinner. On my way home, I even called my best friend, hoping she could join us. The call went unanswered, which wasn't unusual, but something about it gnawed at me. Still, I shook it off, convincing myself she was probably busy. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed my husband's car already parked outside. That struck me as odd because he had told me he was working late. My heart skipped, but I tried to reason with myself. Maybe he had finished early just like me. With a hopeful smile, I pushed open the door, expecting to hear him call my name or smell dinner cooking. Instead, the house was strangely quiet. I walked further inside, and that's when I heard its soft laughter coming from the living room. A woman's voice, a voice I knew too well. My stomach dropped. My legs trembled as I moved closer, each step heavier than the last. And there they were, my husband and my best friend, sitting so close that their knees touched. Their faces lit up with a kind of happiness I hadn't seen in a long time. They didn't see me at first. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. I froze, unable to breathe. My mind screamed, but my body felt paralyzed. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder, and he kissed her forehead with a tenderness that used to be mine. That was the exact moment my world shattered. The sound of my bag slipping from my hand startled them both. They turned, their faces pale with shock, but the damage was done. The scene was burned into my memory forever. My best friend, the woman I trusted like a sister, snatched her hand back, stammering excuses that I couldn't even hear. My husband tried to stand, his mouth moving, but all I could hear was the deafening rush of my own heartbeat. Tears blurred my vision as I backed away. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. All those late nights, the secretive smiles, the unfinished conversations, they all made sense now. The people I loved most had not only betrayed me, they had done it in the one place I felt safe, my own home. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand answers, but no words would come. The silence between us was heavier than any scream could have been. My husband reached for me, but I recoiled as if his touch could burn me. My best friend, still sitting on the couch, whispered my name, her eyes filled with guilt I could barely stand to look at. That night marked the death of two relationships, my marriage and my lifelong friendship. I had lost them both in a single, crushing moment. And standing there in that room, I realized I wasn't just betrayed. I was completely alone. In the days that followed, I felt like I was living in someone else's life. Like the world I knew had crumbled overnight and I was stumbling through the ruins. Every morning I woke up with a weight on my chest, a reminder that my best friend and my husband had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. My mind was a battlefield, torn between the burning anger that demanded justice and the crushing heartbreak that left me too weak to move. I replayed that moment in the living room over and over again, her head on his shoulder, his lips pressed gently against her forehead. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't lust. It was intimacy. That thought cut deeper than anything else. If it had been just a mistake, maybe I could have blamed a moment of weakness. But the way they looked at each other told me it was more. It was affection. It was care. And that was unforgivable. At first, my anger screamed the loudest. I wanted to throw him out, to erase her from my life, to burn every bridge they had crossed together. My husband begged me to listen, swore that it wasn't what it looked like, but the lies in his voice were too obvious. My best friend, meanwhile, avoided me altogether. She sent me messages, long, tearful apologies, but I couldn't even bring myself to open them. I didn't need her words. I already knew her actions. But then came the heartbreak. I'd sit on the edge of my bed at night, staring at the empty space beside me where he used to sleep, and I'd cry until I couldn't breathe. The memories of our love, our laughter, and the dreams we once shared haunted me. And as much as I hated to admit it, part of me still longed for the comfort of his arms. Love doesn't vanish overnight, no matter how much betrayal poisons it. And then there was her, my best friend, the sister I chose. I thought of the countless nights we stayed up talking about our futures, about weddings, children, and growing old as inseparable friends. Never once did I imagine that my husband would be the wedge that shattered it all. The grief of losing her felt like losing half of myself. Who was I supposed to confide in now? Who would understand me the way she did? I oscillated between fury and sorrow, between wanting to confront them both and wanting to disappear altogether. My heart ached for answers, but every attempt at conversation only reopened wounds. He insisted he still loved me, that he didn't want to lose me. Yet I couldn't erase the image of him holding her, loving her in a way that used to be mine. The pain was relentless, and the confusion unbearable. I was torn between the anger that told me to walk away and the heartbreak that whispered I might still love him. And in that tug of war, I felt myself breaking, piece by fragile piece. The weight of silence became unbearable. For days, I avoided both of them, dodging my husband's pleading eyes and ignoring my best friend's messages. But I knew it couldn't go on forever. I couldn't heal by running away, not when the wounds were still open. I needed to hear the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. So one evening, after hours of rehearsing what I would say, I finally told my husband we needed to talk. We sat across from each other at the dining table, the same place where we had once shared laughter and meals filled with warmth. Now it felt like a battlefield. His hands trembled as he tried to reach for mine, but I pulled away. "I need the truth," I told him, my voice steadier than I felt. "All of it. No excuses, no lies, just the truth." He hesitated at first, his eyes darting to the floor, but eventually he confessed. He admitted that what I saw wasn't just a one-time slip. Feelings had been building for weeks, maybe months. He swore that nothing physical had happened, but the emotional bond was undeniable. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, tears filling his eyes. "I love you, but somewhere along the way, I started leaning on her too much. She was there when we fought. She listened when I felt alone." His words cut deeper than a knife. It wasn't just betrayal, it was replacement. All the moments I should have shared with him, all the times he should have turned to me, he had given to her. My best friend. My sister in everything but blood. I wasn't ready to stop there. I needed to face her, too. So I called her, my voice trembling but firm, and told her to come over. When she arrived, she looked broken. Eyes red, face pale, like she had been carrying the weight of her guilt every day since. "Why?" I asked her. Just one word, but it held every ounce of pain, anger, and betrayal I felt. She burst into tears. "I didn't mean to fall for him," she sobbed. "You're my best friend. You're my family. I tried to fight it, I swear, but he was there when I was at my lowest, and I—" Her voice cracked as she broke down completely. Hearing her admit it out loud shattered me all over again. There were no excuses that could make it right, no apology that could undo the damage. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had stolen the trust that had been the foundation of our friendship. Sitting there, looking at the two people I had once trusted most in the world, I realized that I would never get the closure I wanted. The truth was out, but instead of healing me, it left me raw and hollow. Betrayal, once spoken aloud, doesn't fade. It lingers, carving scars you can't ignore. That night, I understood something painful but necessary. Knowing the truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes, it only confirms the nightmare you were desperate to wake up from. After the truth came out, the silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever endured. It was as if the three of us were standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see who would fall first. My husband begged for forgiveness, promising that he still loved me and that we could rebuild what was broken. My best friend, on the other hand, kept her distance, sending long messages filled with regret and apologies, but never daring to face me again after that night. I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to fight for my marriage. After all, we had built years together, shared dreams, and created a life that once felt unshakable. But another part of me screamed that I deserved better, that love without loyalty wasn't love at all. I kept asking myself, if I forgive him, will I ever trust him again? If I forgive her, will I ever feel safe in my friendships? The answer, no matter how I turned it around, was always the same. Trust once broken is nearly impossible to restore. I started imagining what life would look like if I stayed. Every time he came home late, I would wonder who he had been with. Every time my phone rang, I would wonder if she was still a shadow in the background of my life. Staying meant living in constant doubt, constant suspicion. And I knew deep down that wasn't the kind of life I wanted for myself. Then there was the question of my best friend. For years, she had been my other half, the person I turned to for advice, comfort, and laughter. But now, every memory of her felt tainted. Birthdays, holidays, and even inside jokes were poisoned by the knowledge of what she had done. Could I ever laugh with her again without remembering the betrayal? Could I ever confide in her without wondering if she was secretly hiding another knife behind her back? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The only way forward was to let them both go. It was the most painful decision of my life, but it was also the most necessary. Holding on to them would mean holding on to my pain, my anger, and my broken trust. Letting go, though terrifying, meant giving myself a chance to heal. The night I finally told my husband it was over, he broke down in tears. He begged, he pleaded, but my heart was already too shattered to piece back together. As for my best friend, I never spoke to her again. I deleted her number, blocked her messages, and closed the chapter of our friendship without looking back. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, choosing myself over the two people I had once loved the most. But in the silence that followed, for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. In the aftermath of betrayal, I thought my story would end with heartbreak. For weeks, I carried the weight of loneliness, betrayal, and grief like a shadow that never left me. Nights were the hardest, lying in a bed that felt too big, too cold, and too empty. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something within me began to shift. I realized that if I could survive the deepest cuts from the people I loved most, then maybe, just maybe, I was stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. The first step toward healing was reclaiming myself. For so long, I had been defined by my marriage and my friendship. My identity was tied to being a wife, to being a best friend, to being someone who gave and gave until there was nothing left for herself. Now, for the first time in years, I asked myself, who am I without them? The answer was terrifying at first, but also liberating. I began rediscovering old passions: writing, painting, long walks where I could breathe without feeling suffocated. Therapy became a lifeline. Sitting across from someone who listened without judgment, I poured out the bitterness, the anger, the sorrow. With each session, I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about accepting what had happened and choosing not to let it define me. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me, to loosen the chains of resentment that kept me bound to the past. Support came in unexpected ways too. Friends I had neglected reached out, reminding me that not all bonds are fragile. Family members stood by me, offering comfort and strength when I felt like crumbling. Slowly, I rebuilt my circle, not with those who had betrayed me, but with those who truly valued me. As time passed, the sharp edges of my pain dulled. I no longer woke up each morning drowning in memories of betrayal. Instead, I woke up curious about what the day might bring. The scars remained, yes, but they no longer felt like wounds, they felt like proof of survival. I also learned to set boundaries, something I had struggled with before. I no longer tolerated half-truths, secrecy, or emotional neglect. If someone wanted to be in my life, they had to earn my trust and respect it. That shift alone changed the way I approached every relationship moving forward. One evening, months after everything had ended, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She was stronger, wiser, and yes, scarred, but those scars told a story of resilience. For the first time in a long time, I smiled, not because someone else made me happy, but because I had found happiness within myself. My best friend and my husband had once been the center of my world, but their betrayal taught me something invaluable. I don't need anyone else to complete me. I am whole on my own. And while love and friendship may come again in the future, I know now that I will never lose myself to them. I found strength in heartbreak, and from that strength, I built a new life, one that belongs entirely to me. 68.